Hello, Nicky.
Good morning. Let me just unplug my mic because I can't hear you. And
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can. Good morning.
Hello. Oh my goodness, I literally have been so stressed about the not so stressed, but that was the one thing like the tech. And then, like I said, keep touching Word, but so far it's like, oh, it seems to be going in our favor. So that's
Yeah.
all good. So welcome to 15 for Kindness. And thank you so much, Nikki, for joining me this morning. And I'm just going to grab my things. So this is, I was saying when I did actually the run through of the day first thing this morning, that this is the first time we have spoken, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. We've been kind of messaging on social media and emails, but
Yeah,
yeah, we've not spoken in
yeah.
person.
So I've got, I guess, I can get, I'm going to give a little, the professional sort of overview. I'll read from my notes, and then you can give us a, okay, come on, tell us about, the Nicky, the whole you. So Nicky Lowe is an award-winning and accredited executive coach with over 20 years of experience, specializing in female leadership, well-being, and impact. And you're founder of both Luminate Development and Wisdom for Working Mums, and with a podcast of the same name. And actually, in terms of how we connected, it was one of your podcast episodes with Mary Ann Seagart, the author of the authority code or the authority gap,
A gap. Yes,
the
a gap.
authority gap, um, had really struck a chord, and I'd done a post with a quote from that around, we praise girls for being ornamental and we praise boys for being instrumental. And I tagged you, and I have to say, Nikki, often, you do these things and you don't, necessarily hear back. And you not only did you sort of comment, we then had a couple of messages, and then you popped in some time, which we were going to have just the two of us. And then I was like, well, actually, I'm going to be like live streaming 15 hours. So are you comfortable to still do it in that capacity? So yes, so tell us then a little bit about you and what's brought you to do what you do, Nikki.
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to be part of this because I think what you're doing is phenomenal. I mean, what a marathon of a day. I was like, when is she going to get toilet breaks? When's she going to get to eat? So my kind of kindness was kind of extending
Yes,
out.
you're come. I've had quite a few people messaging me, are you going to be okay? Like toilet, food, drink. But I've got my Django's, the cafe attached to the thing of giving me food and coffee and
Lovely. I've got
me
my
taking
coffee
my
here
bio
too.
breaks. Yes.
Yeah. So I just think what you're doing is fantastic. And I was really kind of privileged when you said, would you like to be part of it? So thank you for inviting me. So yeah, for those that don't know me, my name's Nicky Lowe. And as you said, for the past 20 years, I've been an executive coach and leadership development consultant. I kind of started my career in the corporate world, actually working for a Silicon Valley tech company, and found myself in leadership positions at a very young age, not knowing what I was doing. So I got really curious about, well, what is a leader? What is good leadership? And how do I create and manage high performing teams? So that was kind of, and it was a baptism of fire, in all honesty. I was thrown at the deep end and I kind of had to sink or swim. And so I got really curious about this stuff so that I could swim and discovered coaching on that journey. And yeah, fell in love with it and decided 20 years ago, actually after a bereavement, I knew that I wanted to get out of the corporate world. Thought that I wanted to do this coaching, but I was kind of dabbling and not
Mm,
brave enough. And I had a bereavement, and I just went, you know what? Life's too short. And
yeah.
I took the kind of leap of faith to leave corporate, took a year out to retrain, and then launched my business, Luminate, 20, yeah, 19 years ago this year, so nearly 20
Wow.
years.
Yeah.
Literally last week, 19 years ago last
Oh,
week. Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, and over that time, I kind of got to do such incredible work with global companies, traveling around the world, supporting either leadership development programs or working one-to-one with either emerging leaders or kind of C-suite up to C-suite leaders. I was loving it and got married and decided to start a family and kind of naively thought, oh, I can like make this all work.
Do the
Yeah,
same as I've been doing.
yeah, and I'd actually been doing. I was brought in to be an executive coach, a team of exec coaches for senior leaders at a major supermarket, and they actually had a high female population of leaders. So I ended up supporting them. And as part of it, I ended up doing a lot of maternity coaching, although at that point I wasn't a mother myself, but just as part of their return to work and their leadership development, I'd got involved in that. And so I got quite well known for doing this to the point that a lady called Nicky, who set up this supermarket's mum to mum mentoring, she wrote a book called Mentoring New Parents at Work, and she'd asked me to contribute to it based on the work that I'd done. So when I had my children, I was like, oh, do you know what? I think I'm going to know this stuff. I've
Uh,
supported other women and was blindsided by the challenges of being a working mum. And I went back to work, falling into the, well-known trap of trying to work like I didn't have children and trying to mother like I didn't have my work. And a year after having my firstborn, who's now 11, so a decade ago now, I ended up burning out. Didn't know what it was at the time. I just became incredibly ill. And to the point that I remember playing on the floor with him when he was kind of about 1 year old. And I literally hadn't got the energy to get back up. And I was like, that is weird. Like, what is going
yeah,
on?
yeah.
Kept going to the doctors and they did blood tests. And I'm like, no, you're fine. You're just a new mum. All new mums are tired. So I did oh, I just mustn't be strong enough. I just must be somebody that's, other women can cope better than me. I must be weak and incapable. And I got to the point where I kept going back for tests, going, no, this really doesn't feel like literally every cell in my body hadn't got energy. Um, and I got to the point where I thought I must have some rare disease that nobody can detect
Yeah,
because
I'm
I
dying.
know, yeah, I know in my body something's
Yeah.
not right. And I ended up meeting this incredible lady who's a functional medicine practitioner who did a real deep dive into my health, well-being, did loads of different tests, and it came back that I'd got what was classed then as adrenal fatigue. So I'd literally burnt my adrenal systems out. It's now
Right.
called a slightly different name. It's called HPA, axis dysfunction or dysregulation. It's got a more technical name, but the effective base of it was I was driving using my adrenaline to get through willpower, and I'll just push through, and like I'll work once I put the kids to bed, and you know using willpower and just sheer determination to push through rather than really fueling my well-being properly.
Mm.
Um, so that was a decade ago. And I went on this, I suppose I became fiercely curious about, well, how did that happen? Like with all the resources, what I know as a coach, like how did that happen? Because I was genuinely blindsided by it. It felt like it came out of nowhere. So to begin with, I did the individual factors of like, was I not eating enough kale or do
Mm.
yoga and then I got really curious about what is it in my biology, my psychology that led to that. And then, so that's what I would call the psychosocial factors, the psychobiological factors, like biologically, why did that happen in my body?
Mm.
Then I became more curious about the psychosocial factors, which is like, what's the water that we swim in? And, realized about all of the unconscious bias, the motherhood penalty, and all of that stuff that actually societally, culturally, um, yeah, it's just the water we swim in. And
Yeah.
so that led me with the work that I was understanding to share it. So I set up Wisdom for Working Mums with this idea that actually what I'm learning, I think, is useful for other women. And so I set up Wisdom for Working Mums a decade ago. Well, it wasn't a decade ago, actually. I'd got this idea and I kind of sat with it and was learning all this stuff. And I tried for another baby and couldn't get pregnant. Well, I could get pregnant, but I kept having multiple miscarriages. And I got diagnosed with secondary infertility, which is effectively you can have a child, but you can't have another one. So I thought,
Mm.
okay, if I can't have another child, I will launch this business into the world. So
Yes.
got the idea for Wisdom for Working Mums, was getting it all set up, and then discovered I was pregnant with
Ah,
my second child, she's coming at 7. So I launched Wisdom for Working Mums literally 6 weeks before she was born. I kind of went,
oh,
if I don't
oh,
put this out into the world, I'm never going to do it.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
launched podcast, I launched the blog and kind of put
Yeah.
it out to the world as a bit of an experiment. And yeah, here we are 7 years later, where I get the privilege of going in and supporting women in organizations, returning from maternity through the whole life cycle of being a mum and being a leader. And over that time, it's evolved into helping generally more women with leadership and well-being. So I've got Luminate Group, which is my overall business. I've got Wisdom for Working Mums, which is the podcast and the specific resources I provide for working mums. I've also got working parent resources, but I also do general leadership and well-being support as well.
Oh, amazing, amazing. And thank you so much, Nicky, for sharing, your, I guess, your personal journey there. And I think that's really I think the more that we hear, stories from, and particularly people that are, very, successful and have got years of career experience, are sort of known in, sort of the public eye, those sorts of things. And I think the piece for me that I think is a real gem to share is like you say, no, you were, you know, clearly very capable. You'd had a, brilliant career, worked yourself up. You were coaching, you were doing it really well. You were specifically supporting people coming back. And then you have your own child, and like you say, that word, you blindsided, because you must. I know this stuff. Like
Yeah,
what?
absolutely. Yeah. And I look back and I don't know if to laugh or cry with the naivety of it because
Mm,
you kind of go, oh, like, and we often say that you can put all the practical things in place, but I think it's really difficult to explain to a new mother or new parent actually what that experience is going to be like. And clearly,
yeah.
everybody has their own unique
Yes.
experience anyway.
Yes.
But just that, I call it in, when I speak to organizations, I talk about it being a vertical development opportunity. And what I mean by that is when somebody goes through the leadership pipeline, so there might be an individual contributor in an organization, they get promoted to be a manager, or they're a manager and they get promoted to be a functional leader. Each of those is a vertical development kind of transition where your values, your beliefs, your identity, all of those things shift. And organizations know that and they put together a program. You'll have leadership or management
Mm,
development programs
mm,
to support that. And what I'd completely underestimated was that transition into parenthood is such a powerful vertical development transition, of which, as we know, like very few organizations really support people effectively with
yeah.
that. And I kind of was the lived experience of that and how it
Yeah.
tripped me up uh,
Yes.
along the way.
Yes. And perhaps as well, probably, Nikki, probably because, yeah, almost it's sort of that your expertise and experience was maybe a bit of a double-edged sword, because it's that you thought like, well, actually, yeah, I'm totally set up for this, like, better than every, sort of layman's out there that don't have this. So no, thank you for sharing that. And so I'm just looking down at my notes. But so, as you know, and you referenced at the start, so today is all about raising money, for Mind, and that the 15 hours represents the 1 in 15 that of
Mhm.
us that will sadly attempt suicide. And I guess what I'm keen, for all the speakers that I've invited on today, is to support, either educating or reminding us of sort of ways to extend ourselves kindness. So I guess my question, Nikki, in your work, within the workplace, in leadership, what, I guess, how do you define kindness, and why is it so vital
Great,
today?
great question. And I think this is such an interesting concept because it's something that I've thought about for many years. I remember when Caroline Flack took her own life, and there was this huge kind of outpouring of be kind, be kind, be kind. And everybody was like, yeah, we need to be more kind to each other. But I was like, well, we know this, and none of us set out to be unkind. So what actually is it that is getting in the way of it? And I remember I was on holiday at the time, and I remember sitting around the pool and getting really upset, like found myself actually crying because I was like, oh my God, I had this aha moment, it felt for me. It's not about extending kindness to others. Unless we can be kind to ourselves first, we haven't got it in us to extend it to others. And how much as a society we struggle with self-kindness, whether it's culturally, whether it's, and I can't say about other cultures in other places in the world, but from the cultures that I get to work with, and I do get to work globally, but not kind of, in every culture. My experience is, particularly for high achieving women, we find it
Mm.
incredibly difficult to be kind to ourselves, like really difficult. I was coaching a client literally last week, and the session was all around how tough she was on herself and how self-critical she was. And when we were looking at strategies about how she could try and be more kind to herself, it was so uncomfortable for her. Like she was literally viscerally like, oh, I cannot do that. And I don't
Yeah.
think she's alone, and we'll be
No.
at different places along that spectrum.
Yeah.
But I think this whole concept of self-kindness is really tricky. Particularly, I think there's something about, well, if we're kind to ourselves, we're being selfish, or we are somehow thinking that we're better than others. And as women, as girls, we're taught, be kind to others, be nice, put others before yourself. So I think there's some conditioning in there. But I think then, in my experience, if I layer on, my typical clients tend to be high achieving, um, kind of, yeah, highly driven women. And with that, what often drives them is a very strong inner critic. And it's a double-edged sword because that inner critic has really contributed to their success because it's made them do things better and longer and faster and harder and like and seen them achieve great success. But the cost of that, particularly when you get to a certain level, then you layer in, perhaps parenthood, that becomes unsustainable. So often I'm talking with my clients about what gets you to one level in your career is not what's going to get you to the next level. And
Mhm.
I love the work of a guy called Dr. Paul Gilbert. He developed something called compassion-based therapy. And I came across his work, probably about a decade ago. And I was lucky enough to go and do some training with him. And he's got this brilliant concept of actually, we need self-correction, not self-criticism. Self-correction is what can I learn from this and do better? Self-criticism is that you've done it, not only have you done something wrong, but you are wrong. And that then makes it really difficult to be kind to yourself along that path. So for me, it's such an important element of living a good life. So with that, I mean, having the career that you want and enjoying your career, but also thriving personally, whatever that means for you. We often think we admire the people that can drive, and those are the kind of people that are often recognized culturally as like outstanding. But the people that I believe that are really outstanding are able to navigate that self-compassion and self-kindness along the way. And that sprinkling is actually the magic that I think creates a really good, like wholehearted life. But as I say, it's really tricky.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So many. I'm just, I'm a notes person, Nikki. So I'm like
I love that.
scribbling
I
away
am as
down
well. I've
here,
got
and
my notebook and
so many awesome, I guess, tidbits there. And I think a couple of things specifically that you talked about, sort of that, a lot of the clients you work are high achieving, driven women, and with that comes a very strong inner critic. And actually, I was fortunate enough to work. And I'm now friends with a lady called Julie Smith, who is the author of, she had a book come out this year, Coach Yourself Confident. So she's coming on this evening and
yeah,
talking around the inner critic and that sort of comparisonitis. And Julie, 100% high achieving, driven woman. So, and again, the book comes from, her own experience of it. But I love as well what you talk around, and I'll certainly myself look up sort of Paul Gilbert and self-correction versus self-criticism. And I think yes, we, whether it's societal, whether it's what we experience from our own upbringing, or whether it was because we're looking at what everybody else is doing, we always do that. Kim, I can't believe you said that, or oh, Kim, can't believe you did that. Not okay, Kim, maybe it was a bit of a random thing to say, but okay, what could you have said instead, or what could we learn, from it? And I think um kindness for success, I guess is to me is exactly that, is defining success for you. So success for me, and the wholehearted life that you beautifully put there, Nicky, it will be different to you, will be different to um, Laura, who I just spoke to before. And it's actually about, well, how can we extend ourselves kindness to live, our version of success? Because like you say, and like the whole reason we're here today, life is too short. And I put another post recently again about why we don't wait for the crisis. Because so often it is, isn't it? Like, a bereavement or whatever, and people are like, no. Um, so yes, very, very powerful, isn't it? And I love that thought about the self correction versus self-criticism. And I guess it sort of reminds me as well, because my background as as well is HR and leadership development. And I remember when I was working at PepsiCo, we did some work with Gallup, and around obviously that the strengths, and sort of leveraging and stretching your strengths versus focusing on your development areas. And that it seemed like this was almost like quite and people being like, oh, does that mean you can just go around being not very good at stuff? And it's like, no. So in that sort of now, I think quite widely recognized in organizations, isn't it? Think about your the strengths, but actually, so how can we almost apply that, a bit more inwardly, as
Yeah,
well?
yeah.
Yeah. Nicky, can I just do a quick time check? Because I believe we need to finish at the half an hour. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got until about 5 past 10, if that's okay. So I've got
Oh,
just,
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Um, So, I mean, well, as you know, I've got like a million questions. I could ask you. So, um, I think that one question that sort of feels right to ask now, based on the flow of the day, is so directly before I had a lady called Laura Willis join, and she talks about digital harmony. So I thought, as I was sort of doing my research, I was like, oh, and looking through your recent posts and your role as ambassador of Tech Time Out Tuesday, um, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what you did recently with your team, and why that's so important.
yeah, it's interesting. One of the most difficult relationships that I found that I have in my life is with technology, specifically with my phone. And despite knowing all of the research about, how bad phones are for us, how addictive they are, I find myself, because I run a business that kind of encourages me to be online, and I want to be connected to my clients, but also,
Yeah.
through social media, promote what we're doing. And um, I have to be really intentional and really conscious of my relationship with technology. So I met Stephanie, who heads up Tech Time Out, a couple of years ago, and just loved what she's doing in terms of supporting digital well-being. And I realized that actually I can't effectively support my clients with well-being unless I pay attention to the digital well-being side of it. And so I started supporting Stephanie in her work and became an ambassador for Tech Time Out. And basically, Tech Time Out Tuesday, they host every year. It's normally the first Tuesday in December. And it's effectively a digital work detox day where they encourage people to, even if it's just half an hour, be really intentional about unhooking from technology. So myself and my team, I've got an amazing team that support me. We decided we would sign up for it as a team and each kind of decide what we were going to pick for that day to do. And intentionally go and unhook from all of the tech.
Mm.
So Lauren on my team loves horse riding, so she went off horse riding. The other Lauren on my team loves walking and riding a bike, so she went out in the countryside. Laura, my other team member, she just snuggled up with a book and read a book. I've
Oh,
got dogs and I live out in the countryside, and I just got out, and as a team we supported it. But I think it's often when we talk about well-being, we talk about all the things that we know we should be doing, getting movement, eating well, looking after our mental health, but we don't think about actually how technology impacts all of those things and more. So that was kind of why I decided to become an ambassador for them.
yeah. Yeah. No, brilliant. And I think you're right. It's so easy. And actually there was quite a fascinating conversation with Laura sort of
Yeah.
just before, and I'm already thinking about, oh, there's some practical things I can do to change my relationship with my phone specifically. And I think you're right. So we sort of need that. Well, it's the whole sort of awareness is curative, isn't it? Like once you know, and well, actually I am
And
doing the
And
scroll and the habit.
also knowing that we're up against, billion-pound companies, or even in like Apple's, I heard this morning they're worth nearly 4 trillion. They are putting incredible amounts of money and, you know, smart people to keep us hooked into our technology. So we're up
Yeah.
against, so again, it's that kindness of actually, if I
Yes.
trained myself like reaching for my phone, not to beat myself up, go, just
Yeah.
notice, oh, here we go again,
Yeah.
or and to step back from it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So thinking then about your sort of the work that obviously you spend a lot of time in the leadership space. So how important do you believe it is for leaders to, I guess, role model, and encourage self-kindness within workplace?
Yeah, and it's
Oh, you've just frozen for me, Nikki. I don't know if I can't hear or see you. Let's see what's happening here.
frozen.
Hopefully. Oh, I just lost
Ah,
you for
sorry,
yeah. There we go.
my internet, I think, played
Okay,
up.
yes, you're back. So yes, so leaders and role modeling
Yeah.
self-kindness.
I think it's really important, but I think it's often a concept that's not really talked about in terms of leadership.
Mm,
So if I look at how leaders show up, and I talk about in leadership, every contact leaves a trace, as in like forensic science, like every touch, and whether we know it or not, we leave like a strand of hair or a fingerprint and I think of that in leadership, like every contact leaves a trace. And if we aren't coming from a place of self-kindness, there's a risk that the contact that we're having and the trace that we're leaving isn't going to be fueled by kindness. And I think if we don't have kindness, obviously the impact to culture is
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
We talk about how important psychological safety is in the workplace, and like it's a given now that that's like a fundamental if for workplaces. But if kindness isn't part of that, then we're never going to get it. But again, about fueling individual leaders' well-being, if they haven't got self-kindness, often they're using an energy, and I say this from my own personal experience, we're using far more energy to kind of beat ourselves up or be hard on ourselves or drive ourselves. And actually that makes being a high-performing leader unsustainable. It comes with a cost, but it also has that kind of ripple impact on other people. And I think with it is not underestimating. I love the work of Kirsten Neff's around self-compassion. And she talks about kind of self-compassion being both that fierce, the yin and yang of it. And I think self-kindness is the same of often we think, oh, it's all got to be like I don't know. People can think about it as all unicorns and rainbows, and that's what self-kindness is about. But I think self-kindness can be a fierceness, and it can be
mhm,
challenging, and it requires you to step into your own leadership to do it. So even today, me saying to you, actually, I've only got half an hour, Kim, because of everything else I've got on. That was me saying self-kindness of
yeah,
literally back to back. And that has an impact on me and then has an impact on my children at the end of the day because I turn up like with nothing left. So
mm,
that self-kindness often is about having the difficult conversations or tolerating the
yeah,
disappointment about actually what my body needs today is different and not overcommitting. So that there can be like this fierce boundary holding as part of that self-kindness. It's not all softness. There's a fierce kind of backbone to it as well as like that
yeah.
open heart.
Thank you, Nikki, for sharing that. And again, I I love that, because I agree. That's something I'm practicing at the moment. Actually, and last week I was meant to go and meet a friend, sort of for a working thing, but and then a lunch and whatever. And it was, I messaged her and I said, actually, I need to extend kindness to myself, like I bang on to everyone else about. And actually, let's postpone to New Year. And she was like, I'm so proud of you, Catherine Garrett. There you go, shout out. She's and she another ex PepsiCo wrote Conscious Inclusion, so she's sort of specialist in the EDI world. You probably read, but well, with that, I am very conscious of your time. So let me sort of close out a couple questions. The first, Nicky, that I want to ask all the speakers is, so, sort of taking off all your, professional hats and as much as you can, how do you extend your self-kindness?
It's a really good question. I have to be very intentional about it because I think my default setting is to drive myself quite hard. I've got very
Yeah.
tight tendencies, so the self-kindness doesn't come as readily as I would want it to. And I think particularly when you've got children, you're like, no, I want them to see and role model it. So sometimes it's being a grown up about it. Like I was talking to somebody the other day, a top chef, and I was like, what's your top tip for the kitchen? And she was like, actually, you've just got to grow up and be an adult and like do the hard stuff. She said it's like managing your money. It's boring. It's not. And I think there's some of that with me in that I have to schedule in stuff that gives me the space to be
Mm,
like myself.
mm,
So for that is not over scheduling myself because
mm.
I'm an over optimist and I'm a people pleaser by nature. So if I'm really not careful, I'm like I book myself up and then I'm like, oh, that's like self-harm. It's like
Yes,
I need
yes,
space.
yeah,
And then I have things that I do daily, weekly, monthly that are what I call my guardrails. They're like my scaffolding that keep me in that place of being kind to myself. So for me, it is, daily walks with the dogs, really making sure I get that in because I love that.
yeah. Oh, we've lost Nicky again. Oh,
I froze again.
you're back, you're back. So yeah, no, the dog walking.
Reflexology, I have monthly reflexology, which is
Ooh.
like my top way of regulating my nervous system, getting
Okay.
oxytocin and all those
Yeah,
feel-good hormones.
yeah.
So yeah, I actually schedule in stuff that's
Yes,
being kind to myself. So I
yes.
kind of try to do something that my future self will thank me for. I really try and put
So,
myself in that space.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, well, parting question, Nikki, is how, if people have enjoyed today, for those joining live, which I know they will have, and those watching afterwards, what's the best way to, connect with you, to understand more about what it is that you do?
There's probably two ways. One is LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I'm Nicky Lowe, Nicky, Lowe, Lowe, on LinkedIn, and my business is Luminate. So if you want to check it out, it's luminate-group.co.uk.
Perfect. And what I've said is that after sort of today, and once I've shown myself kindness and slept and all of those sorts of
Yeah.
things, I will share out all of the details of how to contact all of the, our speakers and things today. So, well, thank you so much, Nicky. This has been a fascinating talk, and I feel like I could talk to you forever, and not that it's the first time we've spoken. So, thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome. Good luck for the rest of the day. I can't wait to
Thank
kind of
you.
tune into some bits later on, but I just love what you're doing. So good luck today and enjoy
Thank
it.
you so much. Take care, Nikki. Speak to you soon.
Bye, Kim.